Most of the time when you need a paper towel, your hands are already covered in stuff, so it needs to be extremely frustration free when it's in the shop, or else it becomes annoying really quickly. So a key feature of this thing, which keeps it from just unspooling like crazy, is this. It's just an adjustment knob that applies a little bit of a squeeze to the sides of the roll. If you look, it's got a fork design, and these two prongs come down to here. So this bit here is free. So far, no complaints with it. You spin that knob out of the way, and then easy enough, right? To load it back up. This part just goes through there, and then you don't want it tight. You want it so that it dispenses without free rolling. If it does that free rolling toilet paper thing where it just puts the whole roll all over the ground, no, that's no good. Well, this is pretty easy to build. I did it in just a couple minutes. You don't need a blueprint. I'll take you through how to make this. It's got a couple cool features. I thought it would be neat to hang it underneath of a workbench or something if it were at the right height, but you'd have to get used to dispensing it this way, which after some practice I suppose it wouldn't be too bad. Another cool thing about it is that you can mount it to a wall. So there's a lot of flexibility to this design. So far it's been pretty frustration free. It's just made out of some scraps. Originally the design was to be, over here, so that since this horizontal surface is going to get cluttered up with things, and I don't want those things to be in the way of using it. Okay, let's jump in. The first thing that you'll need are these 23.5-inch strips. They're just cut out of 2x4, and they're about probably 3/8 to a 1/2 inch thick, and they're attached down at the bottom to a piece of 2x4 that is 6 inches long. Why 6 inches? Because this is a half roll of paper towels. Paper towels tend to average around 11 inches. So when you cut one in half, you get something like 5.5 inches. So this will squish about that much. But there's quite a bit of flexibility here. Cutting a roll of paper towels in half is somewhat of an art. I've done it several hundred times by now, so you should probably try to benefit from my experience. The best way that I've found to do it is with the bandsaw. So when you're cutting something on the bandsaw, you want it to be supported underneath. See how there's airspace there? That's what will tear the towel. So I make a motion like I push in and then kind of twirl the bottom, roll the bottom that way, and then I roll back this way on the way out. As you get better, you'll get less and less tear out, but it still takes tons of practice. I just guess at where center is, and surprisingly, that part's pretty easy. You'll do a good job just naturally. In that bit of poetic justice, that's probably the worst discrepancy I've had in the last 30 I've cut. But it doesn't matter, because with that design, it will accommodate both sizes. I found a piece of old pipe insulation, and conveniently enough, it fits inside. So I'll insert it there. I prototype so that you don't have to. One of the worst things about prototyping something like this is the fact that it generates a whole bunch of towels that are perfectly usable, but I want to try out my new device. I went through the same problem in the kitchen because I made a really fancy one. Maybe I'll make a video about that one someday. but not now. Okay, let's go back to reverse engineering this thing. Where were we? You've cut a 6-inch block. You put the 23.5-inch strips onto the sides of it. Look, 3 drywall screws, probably 1.25-inch screws. If you want to get ahead of yourself, this circle is just a piece of plywood, 1/2-inch plywood. It's 9 inches. You could use 3/4 plywood if you want to make it even more resistant to knocking over. You could make it larger than the 9-inch diameter as well. Next, you'll have to cut a couple of golf balls in half. I have a whole video on the subject out there somewhere. Put an 1/8-inch pilot through them, and then a short drywall screw into them. Next thing you'll want to dig up is a piece of 1/4-20 rod. The one I used is a little over 9 inches. That's a tad long. You could probably do with 8.5, would be just fine, depending. The reason I say it's long is because it sticks out a little bit here, but it's not enough to be bothersome. I also have it sticking out here a little bit. You'll want to embed the nut on the inside, and that's just so it doesn't rub against the towel. It's not a big deal, but you might as well do it, it's easy. And then tighten it all the way down on this side, making the nut flat. And then when you put this board up against it, it will lock the nut into its position. The location of this rod is from the top 7 inches down. I don't advise that you use a wing nut here. That's a nut knob. It's just a small nut pressed inside of a larger nut, and then, whoops, then it spins real nicely. I'm usually in a hurry, so I don't like to play around. And then just jam 2 nuts together for this outside part. The nut knob can then spin out of the way and around those jam nuts. This is probably the hardest thing to make. Its shape is fairly specific. For one, the drywall screw goes all the way through the main rail and then back into the piece. For 2, its curve is pretty deliberate. You could just put a square piece on there, but it wouldn't be as effective. Think of it this way. When something convex meets something flat, like think of it this way. When you have something spherical touching a plane, it only touches in one point. Similarly, when you have a curve like this touching the towel, it only touches it at one point, and that sharp point causes it to... In contrast, if you have a straight line that crosses the perforation, it's going to be less specific. Boy, this is really hard to explain. How about you just think about it? I sanded the part really well everywhere except for right here. I want a nice crisp line, just as I said, to kind of make a specific point where it starts to tear. Back here, I took some of the material away, and the reason for that is for the loading. When you put the towel through, you want to have lots of room here for your hands to fumble. Not necessary, but I have big fat fingers, so it's nice for me. There's also a mild banana curve on the inside as well. Well, I think that's it. You should have a good idea how to make this by now. As with every project, my aim is to be honest with you. I'm not trying to hide anything, so if I discover any flaws, things that bother me, I will be sure to put them down there somewhere. And by all means, ask any questions. I hope this was useful to you. If you build it, let me know. And let me know about its functionality if you do. See you on the next whatever it is we do. By the way, this one has followed me from the old house. It's still in operation. But oh my goodness, is it annoying. Don't build one of those. And don't build one of these either. It operates with one of these gizmos. And then it locks into its position there. And this thing is like an anti-spooling feature. It works, but of the three that are in the shop so far, the new one is working out the best. Okay, see you later.